difference between moving toward independence and the struggle for independence is what's going to happen during the struggle for independence. Have they declared their independence yet? No. What's the difference between moving towards independence, Charles, and the struggle for independence?
This one is going to include more conflicts.
It's going to, very good. It's going to include more conflicts, which is going to include more loss of life. So you're going to see some skirmishes or some battles between colonial militia and the British soldiers that we didn't see. We saw a massacre, right? We saw a massacre in which Americans lost their lives who didn't defend themselves. This will be the difference in having actual conflict militarily between the militia and the soldiers. And where's a lot of this struggle for conflict? It's not going to be in all 13 colonies. Where's it going to center around? Boston and Massachusetts itself. Okay, so the overall topic is the American colonies, the struggle for independence, and our first subtopic is the beginning of conflict. And there's a little story behind this, a little story. Because what was one of the things they decided to do at the First Continental Congress? They decided to form what? And pick leaders of these. Militias, very good. Remember, they're starting to arm themselves, right? They're preparing for defending themselves rather than getting shot up in something like the Boston Massacre. So, when we talk about the beginning of conflict, we have to mention a fellow by the name of John Howe. John Howe. And he was a private in the British Army. John Howe was a private in the British Army. However, he was in America serving as a spy for the British. In other words, Howe had been mistaken by the colonists as one of their own. They didn't know he was a British private that was a spy. Now this isn't being, hopefully not being discriminatory, but could you tell the difference between an American colonist and a British soldier if they were dressed the same in the colonies? No, I mean they all looked the same, right? And so John Howe was actually a private in the army of King George III, and he was serving as a spy in America. He was mistaken by the colonists as one of their own, and he had been stationed in Boston long enough to fit in. Everybody just thought he was an American colonist that was from Boston. Well, remember we said that the First Continental Congress, those people told them to start picking leaders for militias and training soldiers, right? Well, there were rumors going around, and British General Thomas Gage, who was the governor of Massachusetts, heard rumors that these New Englanders were collecting arms and ammunition. So he finally got rumor that these New Englanders, mainly the people in Boston and Massachusetts, were collecting arms and ammunition, and he wanted to find out if these rumors were true. Because the British, they don't want the colonists collecting arms and ammunition, do they? No, because that leads to uprising. So British General Thomas Gage had heard rumors that the New Englanders were collecting arms and ammunition, and so he wanted to find out if the rumors were true. So what did he do to find out? Which we just talked about, leading into what we talked about. What did he do? What did General Thomas Gage do to find out these rumors were true, Brian?
Told them to go.
Told him as being... He told who?
He told Thomas, or John Howe, to go and try and...
Right, he told John Howe, hey, go snoop around and see if you can see any places that they may be storing ammunition and rifles. So General Thomas Gage sends the old British spy, John Howe, private in the army of King George III, who had been mistaken as one of the colonists. He said, you go check that out and see if they are indeed collecting arms and ammunition. Well, Howe snooped around, and not only did he find out it was true, he discovered where the gunpowder and rifles were being stored. So Howe does some sneaking around, and not only does he find out it's true that they are gathering rifles and ammunition, but he actually finds the gunpowder and the rifles where they were being stored. And he realized that these colonists were getting ready to fight. They were forming militias, they were collecting arms and ammunition, and they were getting ready to fight. Well, Howe stops at a farmhouse near Lexington. And he talks to an elderly gentleman who was sitting on the porch cleaning his gun. So Howe's snooping around. He finds this powder and rifles where it's being stored. He realizes that the colonists are getting ready to fight. And then he stops at a farmhouse near Lexington. And he talks to an elderly gentleman who is sitting on his porch cleaning his gun. Well, this old guy doesn't know who Howe is, right? He considers him what? Just a colonist. And so Howe asks this elderly gentleman, he says, "Hey, what are you intending to shoot?" Because he's watched him clean his rifle. He says, "What are you intending to shoot?" And the old man's reply to Howe was, quote, "A flock of redcoats at Boston." A flock of redcoats at Boston. So, John Howe stops at a farmhouse in Lexington. He sees an elderly man cleaning his gun on the porch. He stops and asks the man what he was intending to shoot with his gun. And the man replies, quote, "A flock of redcoats at Boston." And everywhere Howe went from that point on, when he questioned people, he was getting the same type of stories. He was seeing many rebellious colonists. He was witnessing it firsthand. So he's traveling around, he's running into all kinds of people like this elderly gentleman. And he's seen that many colonists are becoming rebellious. Now, what did the colonists call themselves that were against the British? We talked about it. Patriots. What did the British call patriots? Rebels. Okay, just so you know the difference. So, American colonists who were against the policies of England referred to themselves as patriots. However, the British called these patriots, who they believed were disloyal to Britain, they called them rebels. So rebels didn't come with the Civil War. It came prior to the Revolutionary War. So, here are some things that Private Howe had witnessed during his observations spying for General Thomas Gage. Here's some things specifically that he had witnessed. He went around and found lists that were posted that bore the names of people who remained loyal to the king. So he would go through these towns and posted on the trees, etc., and buildings would be lists of people that were still loyal to the king. So if your name was posted on that list, you would not be in very good stead with the patriots living there. So he went around and witnessed lists that were posted that bared the names of people who remained loyal to the king. Probably wouldn't want to be on that list. He witnessed the continual tarring and feathering of loyalists. He witnessed the continual tarring and feathering of loyalists. He also witnessed that the homes of loyalists had been burned down because they had defended the British point of view. He also witnessed that homes of loyalists had been burnt down because they had defended the British point of view. Now that's the most radical we've heard. Did they burn loyalist homes before? They burned tax collectors' homes. They destroyed British officials' homes, but this is the first time they ever destroyed or burnt down loyalist homes. So this is getting a little bit serious. Well, what Private Howe does is he takes his experiences of his spying around the colonies, including the things he's witnessed, and he reports them back to General Gage in Boston. So Howe takes his experiences and the things he's witnessed, as a spy, and he takes these findings back to General Gage in Boston. Now think about this a little bit. After hearing Private Howe's report, if you were General Gage, what would you think it was time to do? What? Well, maybe not quite. Before you go to war, you know, you're kind of arrogant. It's just like UNLV invited Howard to come over, and they found out Howard was a little tough. They were going to teach him a lesson. Wasn't UNLV going to teach him a lesson? We'll pay you $600,000 to come over here and let us kick your butt. Well, it didn't work out so good for him. So what General Gage thought when he heard this information from Private Howe, he said, it's time we teach these patriots, or better known as rebels, a lesson. So after hearing Private Howe's report, General Gage decided it was time to teach the colonists a lesson. What would he be most interested in the information, all the information he got from Private Howe? Think about it. What would he be most interested in? Yeah, where the guns and ammo were. So what he decided to do, that being General Gage, he's decided to seize the colonial supplies of ammunitions and weapons which were located at Concord. That's where the Patriots had been stockpiling these weapons and ammunition. So General Gage makes the decision after hearing this news from Private Howe that the British are going to seize the colonial supplies of ammunition and weapons which were located at Concord. That's where they had been stockpiling this ammunition and supplies. So he's going to take those. That's the first action he's going to do, is he's going to take all these stockpiled weapons and ammunition. Now, another thing he's going to do to teach him a lesson is he's basically going to capture two important leaders in the colonial legislature of Massachusetts. So the second thing he's going to do, he's going to capture, basically kidnap, two of the most important leaders in the Massachusetts colonial legislature. We should know one already. Don't get them mixed up now. Who's one of them we already talked about that he's going to try to kidnap? Who's the head of the Massachusetts Assembly? What? No, he just a gopher. Who was the head of the Massachusetts Assembly that asked all the colonies to band together? We talked about. If you have a beer named after him. Samuel Adams. I know Stanley picked that one up right away. Samuel Adams. He was one. The other one you've heard of because he signed the Declaration of Independence so boldly later was who? John Hancock. So it was also General Thomas Gage's intention to capture or kidnap both Samuel Adams and John Hancock, two important leaders in the Massachusetts colonial legislature. They were both hiding in Lexington, and it was General Gage's mission to find them and arrest them. Colonists called it kidnapping. They called it arresting. I don't know what they'd be arresting them for. That's why the colonists thought it was kidnapping. So, both Adams and Hancock were hiding in Lexington, and it was General Gage's mission to find and arrest them. So, on April 18th, 1775, on April 18th, 1775, under the cover of darkness, 700 British troops left their quarters in Boston and marched towards first Lexington, then Concord. On April 18, 1775, under the cover of darkness, 700 British soldiers left their quarters in Boston, marching first to Lexington, then to Concord. April 18, 1775, under the cover of darkness, 700 British troops left their quarters in Boston, marching first to Lexington, then to Concord. What are they going to Lexington for, Ryland? They're going first to Lexington for what?
Captured or arrested Samuel Adams, John Hancock.
Very good. Then they're going to Concord, Sully, for what?
Wasn't that where all the guns and ammunition was?
To take all the guns and ammunition. So our next subtopic, which will start tomorrow, will be on to Concord. On to Concord. Okay, any questions at all? Good job. We'll continue on tomorrow.